Hi guys, welcome to this session on Microsoft Visio. In this module I want to look at how you create a blank drawing and how to get started using Microsoft Visio. So when you first open Visio you're presented with this screen. Now at the top you've got Office, Personal and Categories. Now Personal will only be there if you've saved a template, which I have there. Categories, you can see there's different categories: business, engineering, flowchart, etc. Office, lots of different things there, and across the top you've got other suggested searches that you can click on. There is absolutely hundreds and hundreds of different options for you to select in Visio. But this little session, we're going to look at doing a blank drawing or a basic diagram. Same thing, I'll do a basic diagram actually, so you've got some shapes there. Now, so these are all templates. When you click into this, it'll ask you to create it in metric or US units. I'm going to use metric, so I'll click create. And then I'm presented with a stencil down the left hand side of the screen and a drawing pad on the right hand side of the screen. So depending what template you open at the beginning depends what appears in this list of stencils on the left. And you can see there for this one we've just got 3 stencils, but the option, if we require to open up any other stencil and bring that stencil into this diagram, so it is not, you are not restricted by whatever you first get as a stencil set. However, the scaling may well be an issue. You can't pick, for example, some of the engineering diagram stencils to fit inside a flowchart diagram because the scale would be different. Same with floor plans, a building plan. All these are different floor plans and they've got maps. The scales do change, so sometimes it will work and when you bring it in, sometimes not. At the top there you've got a little search box where you can search for shapes and then they will appear in. These are the shapes that are in other stencils. So for example, if I type TV, let's see what comes up. There's some TVs there. Look, I could pick and click and then bring it into my own little diagram. So go back on to scroll up a little bit so you can see the other shapes. Go to basic shapes. These are the basic shapes. Now the other thing you've got in this list is the ability to open your own stencils, create your own stencils. So I've already done that, so I should be able to open one. So I don't know what these ones are. I'll just click on this one. It just opens that up. So it's just some project nodes that I must have saved at an earlier time. And then you've got that stencil there. And then you can edit that stencil to add extra things into it, or as I'm going to do now, I'm just going to close that down. So the idea is when you get into this in a big way, you create your own stencils and you have a set of stencils that you can just open up, and all your favorite shapes are sitting there ready for you to use, and then you can just close them as and when you no longer need them. Now to use these basic shapes, if I just come back up to basic shapes, all you do is you drag and drop the shape onto the screen. Now that is a square. It does not become a rectangle at any time like it would in Word or Excel. You can change that. That is going to stay as a square. If you want a rectangle, you need to bring a rectangle in, and then that will always be a rectangle. It will never become a square. Same with circles, circle, ellipses, ellipses, triangle types. All these are shapes that are preset that you can use. Now within each shape you have a text box. If I just start typing, immediately it just puts the text inside the shape. So I'll just do that a couple of times on different shapes so you can see that works. So you don't have to add extra text boxes, although you can. Now up the top you've got some tools which are quite important. The default one is a pointer tool, which basically allows you to select a shape and then move that shape. Then you have a connector tool which allows you to connect one shape to another. So from there, look, these little squares to another little square, and it glues to that point. And then this is something that can be slightly irritating if you forget to do it. You do need to click off the connector back onto the pointer tool to move things around, but that should be connected to that shape. Now that type of connector was a point to point, so I went from one point on one shape to another point on another shape. And if I move this around, it always stays on that point no matter where I move the shape. Now if I delete that line for a second, there is another type of connector you can do, which is called a shape to shape one. So if I go from that point, but don't go to a point, but just go to the whole shape, it says there glue to shape, the whole shape is highlighted, so it looks the same. Take the connector off again. Now when I move this around, what should happen is that it goes to the shortest connector, so it's now not stuck on this side, it's gone to wherever it sees it fit. This end is obviously stuck, glued. Now if I did shape to shape, so I went from this one in the middle shape to that one in the shape, it would just snap around to wherever it was the shortest route. So that's how you do a connector. Now you've also got a text tool there, which is just like a text box. It's already on there, so I don't need to click that. I'll just take that one off. I'll just click away from that shape and try that again. Text. And then you can draw a text box and type whatever you want in that text. Again, you need to click on the pointer tool to get that off. So that is now a detached text box, as it would be in Word or any other program where you did a text box. You can fill that in with whatever colour you like. You can put borders around it, or thick borders around it. And I need to set a line first, so I'll do a different colour line and then line thickness. Make it slightly thicker than that, so you can see it. So there you go. Now that process there, in my mind, is totally pointless, because you could have, it's got a use, but not, if you've got this tool, just pull a rectangle on, it's already got the colour in. If you wanted to do the border thicker, you could put a different border colour on it. I'll put red on it, and then you could do exactly the same. So you don't have to do a text box and then fill the text box in to create a shape like this, because every shape has already got a text box sitting in it. So you're just duplicating the task there if you do that. Now you can see where I've typed test, it sits in the middle of the shape. There are times when you don't want that to be in the middle of the shape, so you've got the normal editing tools that you would expect in any word processing package there. The top to align that, so that's sitting at the top. Now you've also got a slightly different tool, which is this one, where you've got text block tool, which allows you to move the text block or slide the text block off the shape slightly. So I'm just going to show you that. So you get this little shape. Now if I sit it on there, it should just move. You see, that's the text block, so I'll just move that off there, and then if I just click the pointer tool again, that didn't work, did it? So just move that off. Let's do that again. So there is off. It is off, that's it. Pointer tool. So when I type in there now, I'll need to change that font colour so something you can see. Is it black? There you go. So it was white, so that's white on white, that's why I couldn't see it. So it did work the first time, I just couldn't see the text. So now I've moved the text blocks slightly off the shape, and you can do that if you had shapes sitting on top of each other. Maybe I had another shape coming in there and you wanted to do this sort of thing. I'll just colour that differently so you can see it. You could have a set of shapes, but it's hiding the text. You can just move the text out if you need to. Now the other features up there is this little cross and this little box here, which gives you some drawing tools. So I've got the same shapes that you've got in this stencil on the left. However, when you draw a rectangle from this box, if I go back to the pointer tool and get a connector, hover over this shape, you can see that there are no connecting points like there, these little squares you see on these shapes. So if I bring that to a corner, it lets me glue to this shape, but I can't glue to this corner. And I'll click on the pointer tool. If I move that off, It's not attached. So what you need to do is you need to create a connector if you're going to do this, which is this little tool, and then you use your control key and you position it where you want it to be, and then you should be able to connect to that point. So it's connected to the point. It's not connected to the point. Yes, it is. So you're adding your connectors. Now, obviously, you wouldn't do that if you just wanted a rectangle. For that to connect to a top corner of a rectangle, you just use a normal rectangle shape. So where that comes in is where you maybe want several connecting points, like so. So you've got multiple connecting points. Just take that off. So that's adding extra points. If you want 3 or 4 points down one side with lots of lines coming out, that's what you would do. Now you can also group shapes like you can in Word and things like that. So let's just do that. So I'll just stick that one on there, change the colour a bit so you can see it, and use a triangle, this one that's not been used. Change that colour, and then just highlight those 3 shapes, and I want them all to be in one group. So up the top there and the right you've got group, group. So now these become one shape. You can move them around as a set. Just move them off the page a bit. It creates a second page. Now you can also use effects on these shapes. You've got effects up there, shadows, lots of different styles for shadows. And if you use these ones at the bottom there, you can play around with shadow effects. If I go back into the shadow options, you've got these features here on the right. If I just move this across so you can see it, to change the color of the shadow, and then move the transparency, make it stand out a little bit more. You can make it bigger. That looks terrible, but it doesn't matter, you get the idea. Blur it, change the angle. That didn't change very much. And then move it away from the actual thing. And then you've got all these other features down the bottom there that you can put onto your shapes. So shadow, I'll just get rid of that. Shadow you've got, and you've got grouping you've got, and you can send things forward and backwards as well. So if I'll just bring some different shapes on. Circle, triangle, change the colour, send that to the back. So send to back, bring forward, like so. Then you can then just group those two together so they become one item, and you can move those across. So one of the things you tend to do in Visio is you do create your own shapes, because quite often the preset shapes aren't what you want, so you have to create your own. You draw your own. Use this drawing box at the top there to create tools and draw things. Now if I just open one of my preset stencils that I've already created, open, mechanical, let's see what that one is. Yeah, so this one is where I've probably drawn all of these shapes using what I've just shown you there. But there you see a scaling issue. This is tiny because it fits on a mechanical stencil, and some of these other things, so they're all quite small. Hourglass shape, that's very small, so they don't really fit on this stencil at all. But I'm just trying to show you I actually drew all these shapes. You might be thinking, well, they're not very good, but that's the shape that they require, that was required for this particular diagram. I'm just resizing them as I require. So you do have to create shapes quite often, Now, to create your own stencil, it's a simple process. If I just go new stencil, I can now just drag these shapes in. So I'll call this keyhole. It's not really a keyhole, but it looks like one. So that's that. You've got the option to save it in a second. I'll drag this in, and I'll call this, got no what I'm going to call this, blob, because that's what it looks like, blob. And then you just add your shapes in like that, and then you give it a name. So I'll call this basic. So this is going to go in my stencil list, basic, save, and then you've got that there, and then it's open to edit. Now you can bring other things in. If I wanted some of these shapes to be in that basic one, I could just select it and move it up, wait for the drawer to open, so I call it a drawer, and then drop it in there. And then you might want some of these shapes. So you want that multiplication sign, you drop, wait, and then you drop that in. And then if you go up to the basic shapes a bit further, you might want some of these. So you might want a square, and then you've got to come down to find yours. So this is going to be difficult. So I'll move it onto the, and then pull it in like that. That's just as easy. Call it square because that's what it is. And that's how you do your stencils. You save that, and then you can close that if you don't need it anymore. That's gone, and you're back to your original stencils. Now if you want to create a different diagram, if I go File, New, there you're back to this front screen where you've got all these other options. For example, organisational chart. If I click on that, different styles. Now in this particular one, you've got the blank option, the wizard option, or you can create your own. So these are preset. That's a wizard. So what do I want? Let's go for this one, and then I'll create that one. Now it's split the screen on me now, so just get rid of this one. I don't want this. So there you go. You've got some information at the bottom there in this particular diagram how to do this. If I click on that, so this is just useful information that you can read through. Just get rid of that. So it's already got the structure set up for you, and the way this works is you want to do some sub positions underneath these people. You can just basically drag a position, sit it on top, let go, and it snaps into position, and you can move it around. If there's two people, you can do that again, and then you reposition in this. Now if that's not laid out correctly, you can click on the top one, the sort of management level, and then you go up to the org chart tab at the top there, and then you can change the layer options maybe to be side by side. Maybe let's try that. Now obviously there's not enough space to do that there, so you're going to have to move these anyhow. So when you create an organizational chart, if it's quite detailed, you do have to move things around a bit. If you want to put multiple people, you've got options to put like 3 positions or multiple shapes. So if I put 3 positions on this guy, you see it comes up a bit squashed here. So how do I want this laid out? So maybe I want this laid out as a tree. Let's try that one. Yeah, that works. Right, so you're not actually doing it manually all the time, although you can do it manually obviously. Now the other thing you can do is, let's say I don't want all this on the front screen, you can just right click on it and you can create a synchronized copy, which synchronizes the shapes onto a new page or an existing page if you've got one. Click OK to that, and they're on the other page. So on the front page you can now right click on him and hide subordinates because they're on the other page. This keeps this front screen clear. You can, if you want, right click and add a picture if you've got any pictures. There's one of me, so I'll just put that in there. I'm the CEO. And that's a very quick look at an organisational chart. I've got lots of videos on organisational charts in my series on YouTube, so you can have a look at those. Now if I go File, new. Just one last thing we'll have a look at. Let's have a look at this little timeline. So go in there, create a timeline. I'm going to create a blank one this time, so I don't have anything preset. Click create, get a timeline. There's your stencils. So you've got quick shapes, and then you've got timeline shapes, which is just a little bit more information. So I like using this cylinder shape. Comes up with a time range. I'm just going to leave that as it is. You've got time format UK. Click OK to that. Now what I like on my timeline, I think this is a very good timeline, is you've got the ability to put an arrowhead at the end or the beginning to show the direction of this, and then you've got these different milestone markers. You can bring them on, you can expand the timeline and do a different duration. So if I say instead of the 4th of June, so if I say it's the 18th to not October, come back a bit, 22nd of July, and then you get that sort of feature. And again, you can put an arrowhead on that if you want. You've got little milestone markers, pin milestone markers, all these sort of timeline things you can put on there. You've got the today marker, so I can just drop that on there. It snaps on today. It's on the bottom one as well. And let's do some curly brackets on the top one. When you drop that, it gives you the date, and then you've got some information, and you can just type what you want in there. Phase 1. Okay. And you can do little small milestones, end of phase 1, and stuff like that. At the top there, you've got different options, and also the ability to bring things in from Microsoft Project or export this into Project. And again, I've got other videos which shows you how to do that. But for now, that's the end of this session. So I hope you've got a bit of a feel of how Microsoft Visio works. We did basic shapes, we did a little bit of an organizational chart, and now we've done a little timeline. Some of the diagrams are a bit more complicated than this, a bit more detailed. Not complicated, but the basic fundamentals are the same. Lots of videos I've got on this, so feel free to have a look at those. But thank you for your time for now, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.